The tensions and the stakes continue to mount regarding so many life and death pressures and conflicts in our communities today. No longer are these distant, vague matters to be taken up in a distant land called Washington. All politics truly are local, and many ideologies are coming home to roost with serious implications in our lives. What do Christians need to be aware of, and how do some of these matters affect our lives, our communities, and our children's generations to come? We sit down with a dear Christian brother and an accomplished attorney and a fierce but joyful warrior on the front lines of many important battlefronts today. Welcome to Everyday Reformation, where we seek to take the many truths of God's Word and apply them to all of God's world. From the family and the church to the public square, we believe that Jesus Christ is Lord over all. We need theology that touches everyday life, and we need a reformation that is unfolded in the daily grind of life. The whole counsel of Scripture, the whole course of life, in and through the local church, to the glory of our triune God. I'm Brandon Scroggins, pastor of Reformation Baptist Church, joined by Nick Carter, faithful local church member. Thank you for joining us at Everyday Reformation. Nick, I am really looking forward to this conversation today. Something tells me it's going to be serious, and something tells me we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes, it's going to be right in our wheelhouse where we talk every week, and I'm really looking forward to it myself.
Well, I have been wanting to have Ben Dupre come for a long time now. I heard you speak in Prattville, and I've heard you speak in other areas, places as well. Phenomenal job. And Ben will be coming to speak at our church on Sunday, November 9th, 4 p.m. We'll be looking at issues facing Christians, Christian families, and churches. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be in the evening. Well, hey, let me introduce Ben Dupre, and then we're going to jump right into a lot of issues, a lot of stories. Ben Dupre has extensive appellate, judicial, and public administrative experience in Alabama, including 14 years serving on the Supreme Court of Alabama as a staff attorney and chief of staff to two chief justices, Roy Moore and Tom Parker. In private practice, Ben defended religious liberty, unborn children, and constitutional rights in the U.S. Supreme Court, Alabama Supreme Court, and federal and state courts throughout the country. He is licensed to practice law in Alabama and in Virginia, where he graduated from Regent University School of Law in Virginia Beach. At the adoption law firm, in addition to representing foster and adoptive parents in court, Ben is the spearhead of the appellate division and handles a wide array of issues. Ben and his wife, Jerusha, have 7 children, home educated with Ezekiel Academy, where Ben serves on the board. Ben and his family worship at Evangel Church in Montgomery. Ben, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Pastor Brandon. It's a real privilege to be here with you and Nick.
Hey, let's jump right in. Let's begin with your story. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing, what that was like, the home you come from, how you were molded, and then leading all the way up to your salvation experience as well.
Yeah, no, I'd love to tell my story, and I thank God that I was raised in a Christian home in the People's Republic of New York. I'm naturalized here in Alabama now, but my father's from New York, my mother's from Massachusetts. That's what I knew growing up. But thankfully, we moved out to small town, Western New York, a town the size of Millbrook, if I can put it in river region terms. It's Trump country now. If you drive there between Rochester and Buffalo, you see Buffalo Bills and Donald Trump flags. That's where I come from. So it was pretty easy for me to go to Virginia for law school, and then come here where the Lord lured me down with what I thought was a one-year job. But raised very conservative, very biblically based Christian school. I was using curriculum that probably a lot of the homeschoolers at the time were. Was thrown to the wolves in public high school, and with all the struggles that is for a young man and his witness.
Homeschooled up until that point.
Church schooled, very small church school.
Yeah.
Didn't realize how much it was like homeschooling.
Yeah.
But the Lord, was very kind to me. My uncle was the head pastor, so I was always in church, and we were taught the word. I remember I was sent down. You'll appreciate this. To a Christian Worldview conference in Virginia where Doug Wilson, Joel Bells, the former publisher of World Magazine, Steve Wilkins, and Herb Titus taught. And I just lapped up
Yeah.
Herb Titus's teachings. This was mid 90s. And I bought his textbook. He signed it for me. Herb Titus was the founding dean of Regent University School of Law. Little did I know he would later become a mentor to me, and heard a lot of interesting things in that week. But that was part of the worldview training
Mm-hmm.
that thankfully I got, and I thought most people got that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought most people were taught about God's law, Blackstone. And the older I got, the more I realized how
So education
little people
early on,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
early on.
And I'm very grateful for that. Went to secular undergrad, where I, my faith in practice, I would say, ran aground.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Lord was kind to draw me back. And I remember a repentance experience my second year of college, where I realized I can't coast on my parents' faith anymore. I realized how much I had just kind of been, walking in their shadow, thinking I could ride their coattails and follow the Lord. And I was convicted that it's got to be my own walk with Him. And that was second year of college, and I knew the Lord had called me to be a lawyer. Early on, my grandmother was dying, and I was visiting her in the nursing home there where she was at. Smart lady. She had been a WAC in World War II. She had trained pilots.
Wow.
Got so good at it, they gave her a desk job so she would knock it off. And my grandfather was a World War II POW shot down over France. So this idea of kind of public service and patriotism, I remember my grandfather always flying the U.S. flag and below it the POW/MIA flag. And he was a Purple Heart recipient too.
Did he share those stories, a lot of those stories with you?
Yes, my uncle Chris Dupre, who's a pastor, he actually wrote a book about it called The Wild Love of God. Book plug there for anybody that wants to look it up, because they had a terrible relationship initially. This is David Dupre, my grandfather, but my uncle Chris Dupre, who is just about to move back to Kansas City, wrote this book, Wild Love of God, and it talks about his basically an abusive relationship with my grandfather, but that at the end of his life, they patched things up, and it was an overly warm and affectionate relationship, and that was his final memory of my grandfather before he passed away suddenly.
Wow.
All that to say, just patriotism, American history. My grandfather was an American history teacher.
Love for country.
Yeah, it got passed maybe through the blood, but also through the training. So I knew I was called to be a lawyer because I was talking with my grandmother, who died about a year after my grandfather, and I like to debate with her. I like to talk with her. She's a very smart lady. She didn't like the little baby grandkids. She liked the teenagers that she could talk to, and that's what I was at that point, ninth grader. And we kind of both said, I think maybe I'm supposed to be a lawyer. And then from that point on, I just felt this call and this drive that I think I'm going to go be a lawyer, and I would love to defend religious freedom and overturn Roe versus Wade. To me, that was the Goliath in the land, raping and pillaging the children and women. So the only law school I applied to was the only Christian law school I knew of at the time, Regent University School of Law in Virginia Beach. It was founded by Pat Robertson back when I think it was called CBN University when it was first started in the 70s. And then he built a law school. And the founding dean was Herb Titus, that gentleman that I had met when I was in high school. And I went to Regent. I had a great experience, met a lot of wonderful Christian conservatives. My faith deepened, my worldview deepened, and opportunities to work with a group like American Center for Law and Justice was open to me in my first year, and I stayed with them, and we worked on, defending pro-lifers outside of abortion clinics and bubble zones in Colorado. We worked on other religious liberty cases. I remember the Ten Commandments issue was just starting to pop. If you remember the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm presuming your age is based on looking at you, but that was still percolating at that time, right?
Yeah.
We had one opinion saying that you can't hang the Ten Commandments in schools, Stone v. Graham in the 80s. And other than that, the Supreme Court had not addressed Ten Commandments. But there was this one judge in Alabama named Roy Moore.
Do you know him?
Yeah, not yet. not in my story. But he got famous because he became a judge in Etowah County in Gadsden, Alabama. And he had this little wooden plaque that he had actually hand burned with a little wood burner. And when he was appointed judge by Governor Guy Hunt, he said, well, I've been saying God put me here. I got to decorate my courtroom. I'll put this 10 Commandments up. And if you hear his story, if you read his book, So Help Me God, which I recommend that as well. Didn't know this was going to become a book plug.
No, we won't recommend resources at the end. So.
Yeah,
There
absolutely.
you go. There's another one. And it's the story of his life, but also all these issues that he's spoken about, and that I'm probably going to cover a lot today. And, he had this moment, and I think anybody listening is going to have this moment, and Charlie Kirk's recent assassination will stiffen our spines a little. Well, here's another one of those moments. Roy Moore, already a pretty brave guy, had been to Vietnam. He'd been to West Point before that. I mean, kind of an unflappable, stubborn type in the best way.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a moment where he said, oh, wait a minute, if I put this 10 Commandments up to acknowledge God, I might get some pushback. I might get some criticism. So he had that pause.
Yeah.
He describes this in his book. And he did it anyway. He said, I can't deny that he's the one that put me in this courtroom. I'm going to hang it.
Mm-hmm.
And he would also open jury sessions with a prayer. And both of those things drew the ire of those brilliant fascists, the ACLU.
Mm-hmm.
That was, the adjective was sarcasm. The noun was not. And they sued him, but that kind of got him on the national radar. Then he ran for Chief Justice, still talking about God. But all politicians do that, right? They all mention God with their lips, but their hearts are far from him.
Yeah.
Well, not Judge Moore. And so I'm finishing up my time at law school, looking for a position. I had applied at the Virginia Supreme Court, and I didn't get the position. And I saw an article about the 10 Commandments judge. I'm like, oh, wow. He won the Chief Justice job in Alabama. Good for him. Way to go. I like that guy. Never met him. And a classmate said, hey, I just got hired by him to be his law clerk, and he's looking for other students like us who understand Sir William Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, the law of nature, nature's God, the founding fathers. He said, you should apply too. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I flew down on my birthday. I got hired on the spot.
Wow.
And I'm going to Alabama when I graduate. I'm like, this is awesome. I liked Alabama. I'd worked here for half a summer in Mobile, made some great friends, did some street preaching down in Dauphin Square down there on a Friday night. That was an interesting experience, which I don't do a lot of that. But these guys were just on fire for the Lord, and they took me along. So the Lord had already kind of softened my heart. This Alabama boy, or this New York boy, was going to Alabama. I thought Virginia was the South, by the way. I thought Virginia Beach, which is where I was the South, because they had sweet tea in some places.
The
I had
dividing line.
no
is-
idea the buckle of the Bible Belt South was
Yeah,
here.
it's-
And now that I'm here, I'm like, no, Virginia Beach is not the South at all.
I mean, the dividing line is certainly Bibles and guns, but it's also sweet tea and grits.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Grits.
Where are you on those
And
issues?
sausage gravy.
I eat all of them, and I
Yeah, there
drink
you go.
all of them. I like
Okay.
cream of wheat and grits.
Okay.
Right. Nick's making a face there. Yeah, sweet tea and coffee. Yeah, I like it all. I've also, Lord was kind. I met my wife halfway through my first year down here working for Roy Moore. She was working for the Christian Coalition of Alabama, which some of your older members may remember. Used to be a very a special forces unit here in the state, fighting gambling, fighting all sorts of vice that the Democrat-controlled legislature was constantly pushing.
Mm-hmm.
And John Giles, who became a good friend, his secretary, his executive assistant, was Jerusha, and he would always say, you need to ask her out. You need to ask that girl out, Ben. Sure, John. Yeah. Well, he was right. And we eventually started courting, and Lord brought us together. Judge Moore offered me a second year. Working with him, I was having so much fun. I did skip a little bit, but so the Lord drew me down here.
So you were clerking with
Right. And
Judge
so,
Moore.
yeah, so he hired me. I mentioned that. And what I didn't know is what he was planning at the time. So he was getting praised because he hadn't hung a 10 Commandments other than in his internal office, which was not public. He hadn't done anything in that court building downtown yet, the judicial building. So it was so funny. All these, weak-kneed Republicans and Democrats were applauding Judge Moore for, he's doing a great job as Chief Justice. Why? Because he hadn't done a big splash that offended them. Well, I was scheduled to start August 1st, and so I began driving. Remember this, July 31st, 2001. I was driving from Virginia to take this new job in Alabama. And that night, Judge Moore was putting in the Ten Commandments monument.
Wow.
And Herb Titus, I had lunch with him. I mentioned him. Former ACLU lawyer, by the way, who got radically saved and
Wow.
became radical for the Lord. And he told me, he's like, I can't tell you what, but Chief Justice Moore is planning something. So just be ready. I was like, oh yeah, okay, sure. Should be cool. I'm sure it'll be something courageous. I didn't know what exactly he was going to do. And that's what he was doing literally the night I was driving into town. And I showed up for work just to kind of say hi. I wasn't scheduled to work yet. And there's all these reporters scurrying about and cameras and thinking, what happened here? I went in and they said, did you not hear? He's installed this, 2.5 ton granite monument in the lobby, the gall, And I thought, this is great. I said, boy, this boring little judicial clerkship just got a lot more interesting. And I had no idea just how interesting it would get. So, I was doing the judicial clerkship job, but at the same time, all these events are transpiring, and Southern Poverty Law Center is bringing a lawsuit. ACLU, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, people with all these American and law names, and they know nothing about America other than to tear it down, nothing about the law other than to lie about it, and everything about American history is either twisted or lied about. Other than that, they're spot on. They sue,
Which leaves nothing left.
malign him. Yeah, you realize that. So and so that's what brought me down here, and that's what kept me down here, as did, of course, I didn't know, Lord lured me down here to meet my precious wife, and we now have 7 children. So.
Now, we're going to walk through a lot of different fights and battlefronts, but let's stay on that one. So can you outline that particular fight was so massive, I mean, nationwide. Can you outline the contours of what that fight was like, your involvement in it, and what you saw God doing through the process of that?
So I'll tell you what it wasn't. Let's start there, because up until that point, a lot of, even other Christian organizations, they were advising clients that wanted to hang the 10 Commandments, whether it be a county commission in Kentucky, whether it be, there was a lot of those. Like, we want to do a display. They would say, okay, make it a historical display. If you want to put the 10 Commandments up, make sure you dilute it by surrounding with the Code of Hammurabi, with the Declaration of Independence, which is full of references to God. But, put in enough secular documents, quote unquote, and make it a historical museum piece. Then you can talk about God in the 10 Commandments, but it has to be in a dead way. If God is dead, then you can display things about him. They wouldn't say it that way, of course, but that was the implication, was the courts will look kinder on it if you don't acknowledge a living sovereign God over the state who gives you rights.
Because it's so pluralistic that it's meaningless.
Yeah. Don't actually talk about the God that the Declaration talks about. That who is over, that gives people rights that government should protect. Just you can say a quick prayer to an unnamed God. This kind of ceremonial deism.
Yeah.
That was the environment in which Roy Moore comes through, kicks all that down, and says, no, I'm expressly installing this 10 Commandments piece on the top. And many people don't realize there were other quotes around it. Like, he had "So help me God," and he would have quotes explaining why we have "So help me God" in the oath, or "One nation under God," and historical quotes from founding fathers. 4 sides of this stuff, all talking about God is at the source of our rights, of our liberty, and our law. So the whole thing was about God. He said, I'm not doing this as a museum piece. I'm doing this to acknowledge the sovereignty of the Judeo-Christian God, and as the one who's over the state and who gives us rights. And he would hammer that. And I used to think, I get it. Why does he say it so often? And then when he was sued about it, he didn't back down. He didn't say, oh, okay, well, I'll admit it's just a ceremonial piece. And so the courage under fire, because there were a lot of other Republicans and a lot of other, we agree with you, Judge, but you've got to do what the federal court tells you.
Yeah.
You've got to surround this thing. You've got to do other things other than talk about that you're trying to acknowledge God, and he refused. And if you look at that case, Glassroth v. Moore, it was a victory because Judge Myron Thompson, who is a darling of the left, he got it. Yeah. Because Judge Moore he was relentless in that message. I am doing this to acknowledge God, just like we do in the oath, so help me God, just like we do in One Nation Under God, just like we do in our national. We acknowledge God in all 50 state constitutions. He would give a history lesson there in the court. The whole court heard it. And so finally, Judge Thompson says, so you are doing this. He kind of repeated what he said, to acknowledge that God is sovereign over the state and he gives us our rights.
Well, that's pretty clear.
And Judge Moore was elated. He gets it. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what he got was the premise, but he disagreed. And what he said in his opinion was fascinating. He said it wasn't that the 10 Commandments were on the monument. That's not what made it unconstitutional in Judge Thompson's opinion. It was that he did it to acknowledge the sovereignty of the Judeo-Christian God and claimed that our rights flow from him. So it was that offended Judge Thompson.
This is not an ignorance problem. This is a rebellion problem.
That's right.
It's very clear.
That's right. Had Judge Moore said, I'm just doing this as a ceremonial deism, not to recognize a living current God. And that's what offended the God of the state.
I understand this to be Christian nationalism before Christian nationalism.
Yeah, it was the 1776 version of Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
And
Endowed by who? The state? No, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights.
And in God's providence, you have a front row seat to this.
Yes.
Watching it unfold.
Yeah, in federal court. I'm there in federal court. I'm there back in the building when we're having rallies. People are coming from California and Alaska to stand. They recognize it was a moment. It was a moment to not hide the name of God, not use him not use him in vain, which is what a lot of politicians had kind of fallen into. And if there's one thing that people who acknowledge God with their mouth but not their hearts, they cannot stand someone more courageous near them who's saying, no, I'm doing this to acknowledge God and give him glory.
Yeah.
Because by comparison, they know they're just using the name of God for their own political
Now, it seems
advantage.
like y'all were realizing the magnitude of the moment. What was the pressure like to not just simply fold or cave, but even to soften the edges?
Well, the pressure from without was immense. The media, it was maddening, to be honest, to be witness front row seat, like you said. I see the events of the day play out. And then I go home and I turn on the news, Fox News, local affiliates, and they just don't even get the facts right. But as soon as they say things like, Judge Moore snuck the monument in, that's not true.
That's all I heard.
He was the chief. He runs the building. He intentionally didn't tell the other justices so they would not be sued. He actually protected them, but he didn't need their permission. So this idea that he snuck it in, he did it after hours. So because they had a big crane, he was trying to avoid interfering with the workday. But once the narrative gets out, as you know, once a lie is released, it just gets repeated. And so things like that were very frustrating. People said, he should have done it this way. He didn't do it in an appropriate way. So.
Now, there had to be moments of weariness where this really begins to weigh on you. I'm sure I would think that you felt that. Judge Roy Moore felt that. Did you ever see that in the midst of all of this?
No.
Wow.
No, because he was there. He had not been put there just by the people of Alabama.
Yeah.
And certainly not by the special interests. If there's one thing I've been blessed with, is I have worked for two men who would say, I'm not taking special interest money. There was no big businesses involved in backing their campaigns. And there were no, and so he was not there beholden to anyone except God.
Bought and paid for by Christ alone.
Yeah. And the people. And so when you're there and you know that God has placed me here and the people put me here, there is a strength there. When all these other special interests, when the pressure of the media comes, and with that, it doesn't touch you. So he had that peace under fire. I mean, he's a man that loves a good fight anyway. And I saw incredible courage in him. And then, there are certain things we don't talk a lot about the other members of the court that came to him and said, hey, if you'll just do this, then you can keep your conscience. He actually writes about that. The senior associate justice at the time came to him and said, hey, just sign over control of the monument to us. We, this pack of the court, will move it, and you can keep your conscience clear. And to Judge Moore, he still talks about that as his temptation moment.
Yeah. Now, we've been talking about courage a lot lately in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, and one thing that we've been talking about how outward courage is it comes from an inner sense of conviction, and when the convictions are rooted and they go deep and they're strong, then the natural display of that is courage. But the convictions have to be set. Now, I've heard, but I won't mention where I heard it from in case I've got this wrong. Now, my understanding was that there was some offers that could have made this go better for him if he just promised not to do it again. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah. He was ordered by the federal court
Hmm.
to remove it, and that was kind of the dividing line. That's where people started to peel off. Well, you can't defy a federal judge.
Hmm.
But Judge Moore said, "Look, I put this here to acknowledge God. I didn't just decorate a building. So if I'm going to remove it, I'll be denying God." And that's how he saw it,
Hmm.
because the judge specifically said it's unconstitutional because you're acknowledging God with it.
Hmm.
Mm.
So it wouldn't just be undecorating the lobby. It would be backing away from acknowledging God. So to him, it was a moment of conscience, but it was also a moment of law, that this judge was overstepping his bounds, that his it was an unlawful order.
Hmm.
And I mean, that there's ways to explain that, but there are certain legal types, folks I consider friends on the conservative Christian side, that was a bridge too far. You can't defy a federal judge as they saw it.
We're right here in
Mm.
October, so we're recording this. What is it, October 24th? So we're steep into Reformation Month, where we're thinking about the Protestant Reformation. But my only concern, the danger of the Reformation, is the infighting that can encourage if we don't understand the Reformation rightly, where we as conservative, convictional Christians can begin to fight with each other as if we're all Martin Luther having a "here I stand" moment. And as you unpack that, that's the "here I stand" moment.
It was.
When you are really going up against a godless society and you are refusing to back down. Uh,
It was a moment standing against judicial supremacy, which is a term we use more, I think, more readily now. But at the time, we were beginning to realize that's what was at stake: is, are the federal courts the supreme law of the land?
mhm,
And what's interesting is there were certain Catholics at the time who likened the Supreme Court and whatever they said to the Catholic magisterium,
mhm,
that basically they are the law, that the federal
Mhm.
judges themselves are the law, not the Constitution itself,
mhm.
that they're higher than the law. And so there were certain Catholics that actually started to turn on Judge Moore at that moment, because he had the gall to follow the Constitution rather than,
Wow.
5 judges on the
Mm.
Supreme Court or a judge in downtown Montgomery. And so it's interesting. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Reformation Day, because it very much was, oh, you can't, it was almost like you can't defy the Pope.
Here I stand.
You can't
Mhm.
criticize
Yeah.
the Catholic Church. You
Yeah,
can't call out these robed men,
yeah.
for the false teachers that they are. And he was doing that. And
So you're early in your career. What is
Mhm.
that doing within you? How is that forming you? What is God doing in you as you're watching that unfold? That, by the way you talk about this, I can tell it has had a huge effect on your life.
It has, and I think it did the opposite of what being involved in politics typically does. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of politicians who compromise, compromise, compromise to get higher. What I saw
Mhm.
was a man who refused to compromise, even though he could lose his job,
Mm.
and was given opportunities to compromise and still refused. And so I always laugh when people say, well, he did it for political advancement.
Mm.
You mean the guy that got removed from the bench
Yeah.
and
Right.
lost his judicial retirement by 1 month?
Yeah.
Which in Alabama is a really nice retirement, by the way. He was 1 month away from
Wow.
getting his retirement. I mean, so there's a lot of ways he could have talked himself into
Yeah.
a little bit of compromise. And so, having gone through the fire with him, seen him lose the role that the people had put him in, and then an
Mhm.
unelected body removed him, and I saw, wow, this is in many ways terrible, but it was such an example to me
Yeah.
of standing for the Lord no matter what. Martin Luther didn't know what would happen.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
We know the end of the story.
Mhm.
Um, and we read of these great men in the Bible who conquered, but that's because we know the end.
Mhm.
But they went in no matter what, kind of an Esther moment, right?
Yeah.
If I perish, I perish, but I am not going to defy my God. I'm not going to betray him. And so I got baptized in that, and it just it infused into me courage under fire and the courage not to compromise to what we might think would get us higher.
And we've got to remember these stories because it reminds us that we've been here before
That's right.
and fairly recently. So what I see to be the same principle but a different battlefront, for just one example of many, would be the vaccination issue in the military and so forth. It's a matter of principle. It's a matter of conviction. It's a matter of conscience. And regardless of the battlefront, when we can remember the stories, we can have the firm convictions, we can continue to fight in a variety of ways. And I want to get to other battlefronts. Do you have any other stories, any other thoughts about that one in particular?
Well, I mean, there's part two. Judge Moore came back on the bench,
Yeah.
years later and had another round. And that time the fight wasn't the 10 Commandments. It was same-sex marriage. It was fighting for traditional marriage, it was like part two. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Although again, I really didn't think he would be removed again, even though they'd already done it once. So that was when he came back. It was in some ways the people, I thought, and it was kind of a David returning back to Jerusalem moment. The people could have not returned him to the Chief Justice, but next time he ran for Chief Justice in 2012, that was a sad day because Obama was reelected. But in Alabama, Chief Justice Moore was coming back. And there were a lot of people shaking in their boots over that.
Yeah. And then the lies and so forth circulated around Doug Jones and the election there. And
that was after he had been removed the second time, after, again, the Supreme Court issued its opinion, and the Alabama Supreme Court had in place an order preventing same-sex marriages in Alabama. And all Chief Justice Moore did is put out an order reminding the judges in the state that order was still in effect until the Supreme Court, Alabama Supreme Court, pulled it back, and they hadn't pulled it back yet. And for that, he was removed because he, again, quote unquote, was defying the federal courts, which is the only sin of the left.
I appreciate his willingness to endure that again.
Yeah.
Knowing what that would possibly cost him.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and pause the conversation right here today in Ben's story. What we just got finished listening to really gets to the heart of what it means to stand with conviction and to obey God rather than man, even when it costs something. These aren't just the old headlines or courtroom stories. These are daily reminders of what courage under fire actually looks like in a real world. And I love how the Lord used those moments early in Ben's life to shape the man that he is today. That kind of courage doesn't happen by accident. It's built through daily faithfulness and trust in God's sovereignty. We're going to pick back up in part two, where we'll shift gears and talk about another major battlefield. We'll walk through abortion, IVF, and adoption, and what it means for Christians to stay engaged in a culture that's still warring against life itself. So make sure you join us for the next part. And if this conversation has encouraged you, please share it with a friend or someone in your church. And with that, thanks for listening with Everyday Reformation. Until next time, keep standing firm, keep loving truth, and keep walking faithfully in the place God's put you. And with that, may we be the church reformed and always being reformed according to Scripture.